It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables.
Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Welcome to Why We Roll,
a tabletop role-playing game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre,
And Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Through the show, we hope to amplify new creative voices.
We chat with different indie TTRPG designers, talking through a range of questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games so powerful.
Before we introduce today's guest, a reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please consider supporting the show and all of our games over at patreon.com/Stillfleet.
Okay, let's find out why we roll.
Hey, you're listening to Why We Roll, the tabletop RPG game design podcast with, it's me, Wythe, and...
It's me, Chris.
And
we're here.
We have a great guest whose work we like today, joining us from merry old England. Arthur, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, my name is Arthur. I write games. So, some of like my more like notable games, things I've like done on Kickstarter, The Soul Survivor, Conviction, and May You Fish in Interesting Times. Should I go through like some of the games I was a contributor for?
Sure. Yeah. Anything you want to mention? I mean, I will say I know your work from a lot of cool like one page or not maybe one page, but shorter itch games, and then Conviction and May You Fish in Interesting Times. I backed on Kickstarter. I thought they were really sort of interesting takes, and especially they some of the games touch on politics in various ways, which is sort of our focus in this show, sort of games about politics. So we just thought we'd reach out and just chat about your work. You've done a lot of games, I take it. So, there's a lot to talk about. Maybe do you want to sort of give more background into either some of the games people might know you from, and or your sort of how you got started? Or Chris, do you have anything specific you wanted to start with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was just going to ask kind of the same question, which is, kind of before we delve into your games, like, how did you get into TTRPGs? What was kind of your entry point into all of this?
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people, I started with D&D, even though I've like grown out of it. 2017, I think. Yeah, that's when I kind of like I started like, because like it's a local gaming store and it's like the Adventurers League, so it was easy to get into because like everyone's doing it and there's like lots of videos on how to play D&D.
Yeah, especially around that time, the kind of golden era of 5th edition, I would say.
Yeah. And then about like a year later, I was like in 2 campaigns, but one of them was fine and one of them like I got a bit burnt out. And then I started looking into like indie TTRPGs, and then I started writing stuff myself. Yeah, so yeah, it was like The Soul Survivor was kind of technically like my first itch game, like my proper like game that I uploaded and people liked. It was called Micro RPG Jam that was doing on itch. And then like everyone has to do like a 200 word, doing 200 words. And then mine was like, it was like number one in story and number 2 overall when people like ranked the games. I mean,
awesome.
as a whole, I don't really like kind of like rank game jams because like I feel like it's kind of like set up some hierarchy saying, oh, I'm better than you or you're better than me.
Yeah, there's some bragging rights involved for sure.
Yeah, it's nice it's nice when it happens and I get ranked high.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I think that we all seek that validation as game designers, right? Like, I remember the first thing that I uploaded on Itch, like, I watched the metrics for it for like 2 months afterwards obsessively because I was just like, yes, I want to know that I'm doing well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's natural, right? Like to want to know that your work is received and that people like it, and I think that that's okay to lean into that hierarchy just a little bit.
I guess I'm more like kind of like anarchist in terms of like game design and I'm feeling like people shouldn't. There shouldn't be like some sort of hierarchy of like who is better than other designers.
Yeah, I wonder about the algorithms on Itch too. Like, how do they see the games in what order, and how much that is based on previous success? And so, how do you like break in or whatever?
That's a good question.
But to Chris's point, it is still a signal that people were interested, right, in Soul Survivor, and in your work overall. So, is maybe as a way in, do you want to tell us a little about that game and sort of how you design it, what it's about, and where, maybe that first phase of like you start uploading stuff to Itch, like what kind of games generally you're working on?
Yeah, so let me check. Yeah, I think it was a game jam, and there was a theme, and I filmed the film. Yeah, the film is that the sun is dead. I mean, the sun is like the big like hydrogen fusion ball in the sky.
It's not. It's not your air. It's not.
Yeah, and then like I kind of like go to like Chinese mythology. So there's a story about this archer who shot down like 9 of the 10 suns, which is how we ended up with one sun. So yeah, I guess like kind of like mythology and folklore kind of like plays a huge part into like my game design. And and I've been like doing like a game jam based on folklore. I ran it in 2019, 2020, and I'm also doing a folklore jam 2024 now on
Nice.
Itch. So it's just like people can like make whatever they want. It's focused on like analog games, so it's like TTRPG. If you want, you can make LARP or board games. So yeah, I've been like, I really kind of like, I love game jams, and I kind of like miss. I don't know. It sounds a bit like, I miss the olden times. So like when I was like getting into like game jam in like 2018, 2019, I feel like there are lots of people who are like just want to be like a creative and they just want to create like really random games, and I love them.
Yeah, I think there's also there's an echo of anarchist ethos in a game jam too, where it's like you don't like. I think that there's something really beautiful as an entry point into designing RPGs because you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to do this for money. You don't have like it kind of embraces the hobby side of things in a way that's really generative and really equalizing in a nice way, I think.
Yeah. Also, there is a long tail because you're talking about not that many years ago, Arthur, and I think it's interesting to think about what games from that era, which is again only a few years ago, have not. They've all survived. They're all discoverable, but what has like landed? Like, what are people playing? And I think that does evolve over time, and maybe it's naive, but I think some of the best stuff does rise to the top over time as people discover it. I just learned about a game, the name of which escapes me. I want to say it's like called like Killing State or something, but it's like you're on a reality TV like paranormal investigation show. And there's 2 phases. You have 2 stats, and one is kind of provoking ghosts, and one is surviving, like running away from ghosts. And it was like a game jam thing that sounded, it feels very Grant Howitt-y inspired, sort of short form, but it sounded really thoughtful. And some friends played it here. I didn't play, but they were saying it was super fun. And they'd found it literally on Itch or something. So it had that sense of like, this wasn't anything particularly new or well promoted. It was just a gem that enough people had sort of passed around. So I wonder if to your point, the innovation, and to Chris's point, the sort of anarchy of innovation of Itch is a feature, not a flaw, that like is hopefully persistent. I mean, all these platforms could go away like tomorrow. Some billionaire buys them, shuts them down, I guess. But I'd like to hope that that our work on Itch will just be out there for people to like mess around with for years to come.
I mean, it's also like, yeah, when I was talking about like 2019, like around like pre-pandemic and like just at the beginning of the pandemic, it was the social media was a bit better than the state it is nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was much easier to like, oh, if you make some great art, some cool art, then it gets retweeted a lot on Twitter, but it doesn't happen as much anymore.
Yeah. We were talking about that before we started taping, that it's so hard to, it's really hard to get known on the internet, and that X is just, quote unquote, X is just sort of a nightmare now. So we'll see what new phase we enter. But
I mean, I was just talking about like back in like 2019, 2020, that's when I started like, 2018 to 2020 is kind of when I started, and it was very easy to connect with other game designers on Twitter. And I think, there was also like, because like people were on Google Plus, and then when Google Plus got shut down, lots of RPG designers sort of migrated to Twitter, and that's when, it was the best to be a game designer and like know other creatives who were working on TTRPGs. They were on Twitter at the time, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it was a really generative community at the time. I'm sad. I missed out on that.
Well, you probably participated though in the moving away from D&D and trying other games with friends. Maybe, I would guess, like even if you weren't posting games.
The specific platform. Like I didn't get on Twitter until like 2021, so I like got on Twitter as it was a sinking ship.
Yeah, that is late.
I've heard a lot of good things like about the Google Plus TTRPG community, and then before that it was the Forge, which I don't know much about, but then I think is how like Apocalypse World and lots of PBTA have started. It was in the Forge, which is like an online forum, in the like late 10s or something. Late noughties, early 10s.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like we've talked on the show a little about itch, and so maybe we can come back, Arthur, to professionalization. As a theme in general that we're interested in. We ask people, how did you go from making a couple games to more games to sort of a lot of games or full time or whatever, however you think about your practice and your goals, right? And that maybe has shaped has changed over time. But one aspect I just noticed, because I haven't actually played Soul Survivor, so I've read it. And I see there is an SRD. So I think that's another one. It's like itch, Twitter when it worked, and then turning away from D&D or D20 systems and maybe developing SRDs and open licensing. And I think there's a number of things that happened, over the last 10 years or so, but really definitely with COVID, with lockdown, there was like a big boom.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just to go back to your own practice and sort of your arc, what did you do next, or how was it just like the fun of, it sounds like the fun of making games where you just kind of kept doing it. So after one, you were hooked and you just kept posting more stuff to itch, or like walk us through, like how you got involved with like, putting out not just a game, but like a lot of games.
Yeah. I mean, I guess always, no, for many years I wanted to be a writer, and then, it's November. So like, like the NaNoWriMo, the national
write a novel month.
Yeah, I mean, I joined it for like several years, and I think I won in 2 or 3 years in which I wrote 50,000 words. But then I can write 50,000 words, but then they wouldn't be really good words. So I mean, for a lot of people, to be a writer is to write a lot of words to write novels. But it's not the right thing for a lot of actual people. That's what they want, but it doesn't mean that's what it works for people.
Are you looking for like a quality over quantity kind of thing?
No, in one way, yes. I mean, I don't want to say some people do write a lot of words and they are very good quality words, but then there are also lots of people who can write decently, but then it doesn't mean that they have to make a novel. And I guess one reason why I love writing is kind of engaging with new ideas. And then I feel with TTRPG, it kind of it helps me to write ideas rather than novels. Or I for lots of stuff that I did like lore, I did like adventures, and then it is kind of like lots of short stories I've written. And I don't know, like sometimes like it's good for things to be like short and concise. It doesn't have to be like go on and forever and forever.
No, I agree completely, and I think I like writing fiction, but I don't do it as much. And I think in part it's for just exactly what you said. You can write all the good ideas in a game in a more sort of bullet point fashion. You still need to think about the beauty of your words, the evocative power of the words. You know, are they descriptive? Are they useful? Are they concise? So it's not that the writing doesn't matter. It just matters in a different way than like a novel where you're building a character, you're leading to emotional catharsis. With a game, you need clear instructions to like have fun with friends. And I think that leads to kind of trying new stuff and writing shorter. And it can be more satisfying for some people than that idea of writing 300 pages or something, or even like a 15-page short story. So I think a lot of us maybe come from that world of wanting to tell stories. And it's like, you know, what's the form you want to, do you want to make short film? Do you want to like, you know, whatever. So RPGs, like writing out the instructions for other people to tell stories, it's like a weird jump, but I think it's super fulfilling for sure.
There's something about the brevity of the format that allows you to explore like a multitude of different ideas within a short space as well, right? Like when you're doing world building for a TTRPG and you're kind of like you're saying, Wythe, when it's bullet point format, it's like you can lay out an entire, I don't know, I'm thinking of like Traveler or something. It's like you can lay out an entire planet's civilization with a few die rolls and like, you know, there's a lot of holes to fill in, but it does allow you to hit like, okay, we're going to talk about economy, we're going to talk about population, we're going to talk about climate, all of these different things, just kind of in a rapid fire way, which is, yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, so I was watching like some YouTube video about, or like just talking to people in general, how like video games, like all the newer like AAA titles that are like 100 hours commitment.
Yeah.
Like no one has time to kind of read all the novels, or even like if you have like a 400-page RPG, like people wouldn't have time to read through all of it and play it. Whereas, yeah, with a like smaller game, people can at least read it and then they decide if they want to do a one shot. Without like, not every game can be like a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's like a certain trend that like, I don't know, like people are focusing on like the. I mean, I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not saying that there's like people don't have so much time, like even that to like, yeah, even to like consume the media.
Yeah, it speaks to a shortening of attention spans in general as well, right? Which is not a bad thing. It's just kind of what's happening. But yeah, I get that sense as well that people are like the people that I've introduced into TTRPGs in the last 2 years are scared of campaigns because it is a huge commitment of time, or it's perceived as being such maybe. But yeah, it's like I've run almost nothing but one shots in the last 2 years for that exact reason. And yeah, it's a time commitment thing. It's also just, it's intimidating to be like, oh, I have to make a character and commit to them for a year of this thing. Like I just think that people are less interested in doing so. I mean,
counterpoint, like I run campaigns and make games for campaigns, but I will say I don't think you're wrong that I think the assumption, like when I play, because I played these games as a kid in the 90s, and that was like everyone plays a game forever. And I think there's a mismatch between the expectation of like, we're going to have this campaign where we're all going to be friends, even though we're in middle school or high school and everything in our lives is changing. Somehow this thing will not change, right? We're always going to play D&D. And somehow, you know, somebody moves away, somebody's not as interested, they're more into sports or something. And it's like, you know, it's like a cognitive dissonance where it doesn't match your expectation. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a way to design both one shots for sure, which have exploded to your point, Arthur, understandably, as people have less time or they want to try more things beyond D&D campaigns as such.
Yeah,
but I think there's also just designing campaign style play to be different too. So it's not like it has to go on forever. And that's something we've worked on as narrative structures of like, what is the arc of this campaign? A campaign could be 3 sessions that are just, or, you know, they go in a direction that is bigger than you could do in one session. Right. And I think that, Chris, is about the anxiety, like reducing player anxiety by being like, a campaign doesn't have to be hundreds of sessions. It could just be long enough where you need to meet more than once to like get through. It's the difference between a good movie and a good prestige TV show, right? A prestige TV show might only have 6 episodes, like especially a lot of really good English TV. There's only like 6 episodes, but it's still longer than a movie. You know, you can't watch it all at once.
I mean, lots of good TV shows, they like fall off after 3 seasons.
Oh yeah, that's to me the old D&D thing. Is it was fun for the first 2 seasons, and then by the 3rd season you're like all way too powerful, and I don't know, it just becomes nonsense, right? Yeah.
The story doesn't make sense anymore. Walter White's too evil. Like, I get it, but he broke too bad, you know?
Oh man, again, hard disagree on the arc of Breaking Bad. That's a whole nother episode of Why We Roll.
Yeah, and then scheduling is just like another issue. Like,
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I mostly do one shots nowadays, but like even trying to schedule a one shot, like I had like 4 people wanting to do a one shot, and then like 3 of them canceled on the day, and then like and then I'm not going to do it for just a single player. Like it's just not as fun anymore. So yeah, I mean, like scheduling with RPG. I don't know how about you. Like maybe you have like a more easier to find more consistent players, like people with like similar schedules.
No, it's always hard. It's that's the hardest part of any.
It's a nightmare.
Whether it's friends,
I mean,
strangers,
when you are like, if you have friends in school, if you're all in school, then like you all have like the after school free, or most of like when you're school kids, then it's a bit easier.
Yeah,
I guess.
I will say
sure.
This raises the question which we always ask, and this is kind of an interesting place to ask it, I think, is like, do you play test all your games, some of your games? Do you view play testing as an integral part? Like, I need to get actual humans who are not me to experience it before I publish? Or do you publish, play test, and then go back and correct stuff? Do you have thoughts on this kind of aspect of design?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I publish things, and I try to play test them. And yeah, I mean, like for example, like yeah, I mean, for like maybe for interesting times, I actually did a playtest before the Kickstarter. But also, as I was saying, like it's difficult enough trying to bring like a popular indie game to like the RPG meetup and then say, oh, let's like schedule a session, and then it would still take me like a lot of like I would get like maybe like 5, if I'm lucky, I get 5 players who are interested. And then I have to find a date where like all the 5 people agree to a time, and then I would drop one of the player can't make it. I'll do the poll, and then one person can't make Monday, one person can't make Tuesday, etc., etc. And then I'll end up with one less player, and then like fingers crossed, I will be able to like most of them will show up on the day. So there is like even with like a more popular RPG, and then when I'm like. Yeah, I don't have a group of friends that would like play test with me all the time. So yeah, it's just like hard to find people to schedule a game.
Yeah, it's the perennial problem we all face.
So yeah, I mean, maybe we can talk about some of your other games. I mean, you have so many. So I will just say, for people who don't know your work, and Arthur, please correct me or add. Obviously, you're the creator, but from my perspective of like, oh yeah, like what's going on, what's cool in indie RPGs. Like when I go, I didn't even think about it this way, but when you go to your itch page, you have your games organized by themes. And the first one is superheroes or superpowered misfits, which I think is an intriguing category already. Then you have a lot of games, you have RPGs on Chinese culture, right? And then RPGs on identity and self-discovery. And then you have other categories that are more sort of mechanical and less sort of thematic. And there's a lot of they're sort of Venn diagrams. You can see a couple games pop up in a couple of places, but generally there's enough games where it's sort of things fall into one or the other. So that already gives a sense of like your design interest. But yeah, like moving from like, you did a couple itch games to like you're doing stuff regularly. I guess maybe a way to formulate a question is like, how do you think of your work in terms of your overall like goal or your overall interest as a designer, if that makes sense? Like what would success look like, or like what's most fun about this process of kind of coming up with ideas? And then, as you say, it's hard to always reliably play test, but you generally do try, it sounds like, to sort of, have fun, of course. So how do you do it? I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess like the other thing that I didn't answer about the question is like sometimes some of the games are like quite personal to me, and then I find it hard to find a wide audience to play test. I guess like most of the games that I won for people, most of the time when I won one of my games for people, they're happy, everyone had fun. But then like it's just like there's that one. It was only that one time, and then it kind of like burned into my mind. It's just like, oh, people didn't like one of my games, and then because I put lots of like personal stuff in the game, and then it feels I don't know if you feel the same way. But like if someone say, "Oh, like your game is bad and you shouldn't make it," and then like it just yeah.
Oh yeah, that's like a knife.
Yeah, it just drowns out all the other good things people say about your game.
Yeah, I think that kind of imposter syndrome or whatever adjacent to that. I think that we all kind of feel that imposter syndrome to some degree, where it's like, oh, one person hated it, it's terrible. But I was going to ask you, do you find that you get, this goes back to playtesting, but also just feedback in general? I mean, your stuff is very popular on itch, doing well. Do you find that you get a lot of online feedback, or people play testing your games without you there, or just playing it and getting back to you that way?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people do comment, and then like if they're like, I do appreciate like constructive criticisms, and if like it's something that I can change, and then if they make a suggestion and it's something that I can change, and I would think whether it would fit, and then if it does, then I would like make the change into the game, obviously. But then if like someone is just like seems like they're wanting, then like obviously if there's like nothing like constructive in there, then I would just ignore it. Or I would be nice and say, oh, thank you for playing the game and thank you for leaving your comments most of the time, unless they're being really mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have any engagement, and I think even as this is maybe it would not be true depending on the relative percentage, but like having a few comments that are negative might just mean you're on the right track, because you're doing something that provokes emotion and that people are downloading and reading and even playing. And that is very different. Like I will say, for example, I think in Soul Survivor, actually I was just looking back and like on the itch page, one of the comments from years ago from when you posted it was about the percentage chance you would a certain game effect would happen. And you replied very nicely and explained something. And then the person said, oh, thanks a lot. I missed that. And I think that even says, like, in a way, the fact someone's engaging that deeply, where they're kind of criticizing a specific number you assigned to a mechanic, means that they're interested. And I think that is all part of, in a way, the hard part of the imposter syndrome, or the toughening up that has to happen with entrepreneurship versus just making stuff for your friends, where you have to embrace those moments and say, well, I'm getting some kind of feedback, and any kind of feedback is better than like, in the void, I just post things, no one replies, So I definitely feel like a lot of people have checked out your games, and you do have like at least one system that I know of, which is the Guided by the Sun, right? And people have made games using that, which again is a mark of like very serious interest when they're sort of using your mechanics.
It's definitely nice when people start designing games using like the system that I made. I mean, it was all started with like the Wedge and Alone SLD. I mean, obviously, people will have been like making hacks of games all the time, but that was like when the Wedge and Alone came out, lots of creators are trying to make like SLDs of their own systems, and it was nice. Like it was like we're exchanging like information, we're encouraging each other to like make hacks of our games. And then, I try to, it's a good like community spirit.
Some of your most popular games, Soul Survivor, The Steadfast and the Rebellious, and now May You Fish in Interesting Times, which you've got coming out. They're all Guided by the Sun, I'm assuming, but they're all card-based. And I was wondering if you could speak to...
No, I mean, sorry. The Steadfast and the Rebellious is based on Reincarnation Redux Our Requiem by Ray Najadi. Okay. So we're actually, there was a game jam in which we are all making hacks of Ray's game. So it was like, as I was saying, like it was like 20, let me check when it was. It was like, it was 2019. We were just like all making games together, and then we were all like hacking each other's games. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then for this particular game jam, we are all like hacking games by this one designer. And then that's how I made Steadfast and the Rebellious.
Nice. But I was curious if you could speak to why cards? Why did you choose to go with a card system as opposed to dice based? And could you explain some of the mechanics of the system that you've designed?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Way's original game is I think uses tarot, and then I thought, I mean, I definitely love the tarot cards. But at the time when I was like making Stefan and the Rebellious, I was thinking like most people would have playing cards, and like tarot cards are a bit less common. So just why I used playing cards instead, and then I just separate like the suits into like 4 like traditional fantasy classes. So I think it's the fighter, the thief, the cleric, and so I don't have the file open in front of me, so I can't remember who is the last one.
Is it the last one? Probably wizard or spellcaster.
Oh yeah,
that makes
that's
sense. That's the like the core 4 from BX D&D.
Yeah, I think it's
and then it says
the mage in this game. Yeah,
mage. Yeah.
Yeah, so it says it's a story about you are the citizens of a city, and you are just defending yourself against like the big a bigger force is trying to invade your city. I guess in a way it's kind of a lot to do with power and culture, and how like you have like always have like a bigger system, like bigger country is like trying to swallow up like a smaller country. Because like with history, it's always about like who is winning and who is the bigger country, the bigger empire swallowing up the smaller country, and it's always about the kings and the queens, and like how the rulers fight over each other for like the land, but then they kind of like neglect like the people who live there, and just like they don't care about the little men. They always care about like generals and kings, and I don't know, it's just like stories in which it's about, it is your city, you're defending it. And I guess like a problem with lots of people have raised a problem about D&D is like, you're going to somewhere that you don't belong, and you just like go and murder all the indigenous life.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. What does it mean to be a hero who's so powerful, and how do you interact with political forces? That's one reason we want to talk to you in particular, is I feel like your games explore some of those questions. And that's what we make games about, is trying to get out of the kind of murder hobo kind of neo-colonial loop, or however you want to describe it, of D&D. And I think that's, Steadfast and Rebellious is an interesting one where, right, it's sort of highlighting the city scale and defending the city from some sort of outside force. And you can interpret it, it says Demon King, it's a tyrannical Demon King, but you could imagine any number of scenarios where these rules would work for sort of, you're powerful, but you're not, and you're defending something, you're liberating something as opposed to doing a bad thing. So I think it's interesting to reframe like traditional fantasy a little bit and think through that. And I know, like, for example, May You Fish in Interesting Times to me is appealing because it is, to connect some of these threads, it seems like, Arthur, please tell us sort of how you think about it, but it seems like a political game about, in a very different register. It's about a fishing trip, but it still is about ultimately sort of politics and how do you respond to oppression, and what as an agent, as a PC in a game, you could do about it. Like, what could one person do? So it's a different kind of heroism. Yeah.
And maybe for folks who haven't read or played May You Fish in Interesting Times, could you give us a quick like synopsis or elevator pitch of what the game is as well?
Yeah, so May You Fish in Interesting Times. You are anthropomorphic birds, fishermen, but you are also ex-rebels who took part in a revolution several years ago that failed. So it's a cozy fishing game, but it is a fishing. It's a game about fishing, but it's actually about like ex-rebels, ex-revolutionaries sharing stories with each other, retelling, telling story about their past and what happened and how the revolution failed.
And there's a fishing mechanic and a political mechanic, which is really fun to put in one game. It's just like very different from a D&D, like fighting demons.
Yeah, because it was a collaboration between me and the illustrator, Carol Wu, and we decided we didn't really want like a violent game. We don't want a game about we could have made a game about like birds fighting fish, and
yeah.
but yeah, but then we just say, oh yeah, you're just birds, and you're fishing. You're bird people. You're fishing together, and you're telling a story. Yeah. So we briefly talk about mechanics. So yeah, the mechanics is kind of is inspired by the like For the Queen and another like prompt based TTRPGs, and also by Brindlewood Bay. So if you're going to fail a roll, you can like mark off. There's like a list of things you can mark off. You mark it off. You answer a question, and then you turn a failure into success. So there's like you answer stories about your past and your future. When I was designing Maybe Fishing in Interesting Times, I was just like, oh, how do I come up with like 100 different questions? So in the end, it's not 100 different questions. It's kind of like each playbook has like 6 unique questions, but then they follow the same line of thought. And then there's also 6 questions which are the same across all playbooks. But then those same questions allow players to trade cards with one another. So yeah, in a way, I took the system in which if you fail, you have to answer a question, and then turning your failure into success. But for me, you just do that. You just do that every turn. And then you want to collect. So every time you draw a card, and if you collect 3 cards of your own suit or of numerical order, then you catch a fish. You roll a die to see how big the fish is.
Nice.
I guess it's just enough mechanic to like make the fishing interesting, but the focus is really about who your character is and the revolution.
Yeah, it's about filling out that background. I mean, it's interesting because it's a game that at least hearing about it, it seems like it incentivizes you to be bad at fishing so that you can build out your character more. Like the heart of the game is what happened to the revolution, who am I, what is my place in it. But I don't know. I love it on a lot of different levels because it also speaks to the fact that revolution it's not always violence and in the streets. Like it's also community building. It's also about holding each other. It's also about caring for each other and hearing each other's stories and just this plethora of different modes of care, which I think is really nice to have a game that represents that in a very sweet way.
Yeah, well, and it also I like the term modes of care, but I also think it's interesting, Arthur, that it's about failed revolution. So it's in this register, It's very different than Rebellious, where it's sort of assuming you're doing a liberatory moment, and I think most D&D type games, you're kind of doing an active thing. This game assumes you already did that and it didn't work, and now you're just going fishing, and so it's something interesting about the sort of the embers of politics and political movements, and then how do you rebuild or make sense of? And I love, it's also interesting that you made a game where there's subtext and text, because usually in D&D type games it's much more straightforward. It's like the subtext is I want to kill the goblin, so the text is also going to be 1-to-1 I kill the goblin. This game is like the text is we're just fishing, but the subtext is, as you say, all of the deep things in the playbooks where you have these great questions about the recent past, basically, and the character's memory. And the art is really good. So again, just to recommend it to people, the art is super cool. And there's little facts about the actual birds, which is like another level of just sort of meta, interesting game design that I appreciate. All is still in a charming, it's still a small game. It's meant to, you tell us, I imagine this is sort of a one-shot type game. It's hard to imagine a campaign of fishing.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. Can you tell? Have you been able to playtest this one? And can you tell us a little about kind of some of the experiences or how people have interpreted that sort of question about failed revolution and politics and like where they've gone with it, or any sort of cool things jump to mind in sort of developing it that you want to share?
Yeah. So there's a game that I play tested before I put it on a Kickstarter, and then after the Kickstarter, I also played it a few times with different people, mostly with strangers as well. And then I'm really happy that someone played the game and streamed it, so I can watch how they play the game. Yeah, it was after everything was done. So I don't know, like, I mean, there are not a lot of big changes that I want, but then, like, there's some, I don't know, like, watching the videos, I guess I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I always, everything works, but then, like, maybe I should have, like, put some, like, clarifications or, like, emphasizing some points, like, earlier on in the references. But, yeah, I mean, it's a project that's finished, so, anyway, yeah. It works, and as I said, it's just a few minor things that people kind of like took a while to get.
Well, I also wonder if maybe you later publish like an edition of multiple games or something, and you could go back and make those little tweaks across games and think about how your design has evolved. We all just change over time too, you know.
But I mean, when I watch people playing the game and when I want the game myself, like everyone told me to have fun. So, and I think like it went well. Every one of the sessions. Something that's very interesting that I noticed in like people playing the game is the Pelican, who is like an organizer in the Revolution. To me, I put in like the Pelican is a bit greedy and a bit self-serving, but that was like based on the bird trivia, in which like the actually like the real life pelicans, they're quite greedy and they would like steal fish from other birds' pouches.
I mean, as a former union organizer, I will say it fits with some personalities of organizers as well, where it's like you're a little self-serving, but you're doing a thing for the community. But like, yeah, I get it. I think there's a nice translation there, even though it is just based on the pelican.
Enjoying the show? Please consider supporting Why We Roll in all of our games over at patreon.com/stillfleet. Dear patrons, we really love y'all. We just couldn't keep making Why We Roll without your support. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Now back to the show.
I wasn't really thinking about like real life organizing. I mean, I was, but wasn't. I wasn't like particularly trying to criticize anyone when I was designing the playbooks. But then when playing the game, then lots of people kind of lean into like, oh, they're organizing, but then they just take a bit extra for themselves. I think it's just, I guess that's like with power. I know. It's to quote Spider-Man, and to quote Uncle Ben, like, with great power comes great responsibilities. And then, people who are organizing, they do have certain powers, and not every one of them would be like fully responsible with what they're doing with the power.
Yeah, and that's also inherent to any of these games where we're doing politics that aren't Conan the Barbarian, picaresque murder hoboing, which to me is very right wing. Just greedy, take what you want, be the king by killing the old king. So I don't love the politics of traditional RPGs. But then if you're doing any other version, there's just the chance that people do it wrong when they play it, which you have no control over. There's a chance that people have different tendencies and interpret the same cues in different ways. So like the role of an organizer, like, Chris, your experience as a union organizer. My experience is basically like in more academic Marxist, right? It's very different in different settings, right? Blue collar, white collar, it's different in different national contexts. And just tendency. Like some of us are going to be more interested in like a game where a vanguard party is good, or just a pure anarchy and like anarchists are correct. So that's going to take these games, in different directions is all.
So I was just thinking about blue and white collar. It was like a line in my game in which I say like birds of every colors of colors rose up against the tyrannical emperor. I mean, at first I was just going to write like blue and white collar, but then I was worried that people wouldn't get it, or like it would be like too niche. So I kind of rewrite it. I rewrote it so that it makes sense on its own. But if you get the context about using colors to describe class, then you would get it even more out of it.
Yeah. There's nice layers to that where it's like, birds come in a bunch of different colors, right? But also,
different colored colors. Yeah. Sorry, it is a mouthful to use color and color.
Yeah. Again, it's text and subtext. It's very playful with both of those things. Instead of blue collar, you have like a red breast or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And you have birds, right? It's also fantasy. So I think that's the other thing that's interesting with political game design, which is at the end of the day, unless you're doing a very realistic simulationist game, which like why on earth, if you live in the US or the UK, would you play that game? It seems very depressing. We're playing it right now in real life.
I play that game every day, baby.
Okay. So, I think it's fun to say in a fantasy setting, then what translates to what, and leave a lot of room. I mean, just inevitably there'll be sort of interpretive jumps and different interpretations of different cues, because it's not one-to-one. It's not a real revolution you're talking about. It is this abstracted revolution with anthropomorphic birds. So,
I mean, I also, sorry. It's just I didn't actually mention the real life inspirations, I guess. Like I was like inspired by lots of like big like mass movements, big protests that took place like in the 2010s. And it's not just in the West. There's like the Arab Spring, how like lots of people rose out like what's it called, like popular movement or popular uprising. They are mostly it's not like about I mean, obviously some of them there are always like bad people doing bad stuff. There's always like some military coup, but then like I read about a lot, which is just like the citizens kind of had enough of the government. They organized, they stood up to the government, and they won. And I mean, at the time it was like really good. But then like several years down the line, it's as if like nothing has changed. Like, I mean, some of them like they do successfully replace the head of the government, but then the new one is like equally corrupt. And then some of them they thought there's a change, and then nothing happened. And then like I guess like something like that's closer to home is kind of like with the like in the UK with like the Labour Party, we had like a very progressive leader. I mean, I wasn't, to be fair, like at the start of it, I wasn't really into politics. I mean, I was being like more radical like, I started being more and more left wing in the past 10 years or so. And but then we had like really progressive Labour leader, but then lots of young people, young people within the party like voted him to be the leader, but there was like lots of like internal sabotaging and the news media, which is like mostly they're for the establishment, and they started like attacking this Labour leader. And just feeling like, at the time there was like a lot of hope, and people think that there can be like real change, and then now years have passed, we are back to square one, or it's like even worse than what happened before. It was even worse than the States before, like, I don't know. Like before Trent, I don't know, so when Jeremy Corbyn was like became Labour leader, and then like now it's worse than it was before,
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's very similar, I think, to Bernie Sanders here. Corbyn and Sanders had visions that were not even, I mean, they weren't, full socialists, right? They're democratic socialists who wanted to make progressive changes within a liberal economic framework. And they were both, really sniped, really taken down by, you saw the alliance across the center left to the far right in both countries' contexts, with their own electoral systems and their own media spheres. You saw both movements, sort of dismantled. And I think that was definitely, for a lot of people, a wake-up call where, it's a question about, are you trying to achieve reform, and what does it mean to quote-unquote resist, versus full-on revolution, radical revolutionary politics, where you're saying electoral politics are not ever going to get there. Like, you're never going to be allowed to elect, real change. You're going to have to force that issue some other means, right? And we can talk about worker unionism or direct action or whatever else we want to talk about, but parallel sort of autonomous communities and community building, and being able to sort of live lives that aren't governable by the state in certain ways. But I definitely hear you that was like I think in both countries' contexts in different ways, it was a big wake up call, a big moment. And it definitely, for me at least as a game designer, it made me think, why would I make games that are so divorced from these? Like in the same way that I don't want to make a one-to-one simulationist game where you play like DSA organizer in New York City. I also don't want to make games that are just murdering goblins with, it's like there's got to be a happy middle where we can have real sort of adult meaningful conversations, but also have fun and have games that sort of function that way. So I hear you that would be echoed in May You Fish in Interesting Times without ever, right. It's not about any of those one revolutions you mentioned or one periods of change. It's sort of about a version of them. Yeah.
I guess what I wanted to say is like about the hope that was kind of snuffed out, but how I guess sometimes I'm like, okay, it's about like moving on, but actually no, it's not about moving on. It's about kind of like holding the fire, holding the ember, and not let it die, I guess.
Yeah. Do you ever listen to, this is going to be very specific and niche for listeners of the podcast, but Arthur, do you ever listen to the band Dawn Raid? Do you know them? They're from Liverpool. They're an anarcho-communist black metal band. They're fantastic. Check them out. But they have this one line that this is reminding me of, which is every ember builds the furnace, which is like, yeah, like sometimes it's not about the fire. Sometimes it's not about like these moments of active revolution. Sometimes it's about holding the embers. Sometimes it's about like building up that heat over time.
Yeah. Also in the U.S. context, we talk about, like Fred Moten talks about laying in the cut, and sometimes a lot of, in the Black radical tradition after the Panthers were crushed, like, realizing, again, you weren't, with the ascendant Reaganism and Thatcherism in the UK, you weren't going to, like, elect cool leaders in the 90s or 2000s, but it's like, what could you do in parallel, and how could you keep the flame alive and teach the next generation? And I think that has not been super successful, but we've seen a resurgence since 2008 of younger people connecting more and more. And obviously with Sanders and Corbyn, and then with COVID, you see more and more people kind of saying, wait a minute, why am I not in a union? Or whatever it is, right? Whatever political consciousness building that is vaguely leftward. So I definitely think we're in, these things come in cycles, and we're in a moment of opportunity. And while games, are not about that, always, I mean, they still present an opportunity. You're having kind of real dialogue with people, and you can kind of get to some emotional, deep places through tabletop games, story games. So I think it's cool to just see how different designers, might take that in different directions. So I definitely think May You Fish in Interesting Times just stands out as like, just a different kind of a game I don't feel like I've seen anything like it. Fishing, talking about politics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my other games are also political in that context. Yeah, I mean, with Molotov College, which is a game that I'm still kind of working on. It's inspired by like Umbrella Academy, or the first 2 seasons of Umbrella Academy Netflix show, because it kind of like the final season was disappointing, and by X-Men. So it's about you are people with superpower, you are superpower misfits, but you are not the Justice League or the Avengers. You are not like super cops, but you are people who are I mean, I kind of I got a mean comment from people, which I deleted. It's just I didn't need that negativity. They were complaining that, you have to play as a minority. So the idea is like in the playbooks, I have a question. It's like, what makes your character a minority, or like what makes your character marginalized? And which, to be fair, they can say none of that. I mean, it's a story game, so no isn't. I mean, obviously, I don't want people to say no. It's not by design, but if they say no, then there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, that's oh my God, that drives me up the wall, because it's like, what's the point of the original X-Men, right? It's like kind of a clunky metaphor for racism and marginality to begin. It's just like, come on, man, you're already playing in the mode, just get into it.
So on the list I have like your race, ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or disability that makes you a minority. And I know I wrote what I wrote, and I stand by it, and lots of people like it. I mean, it doesn't matter what people like. Sorry, it's just like, there's a message about how it's about fighting for the little guys and about like building solidarity with like different marginalized groups. And yeah, and then like the whole game of college is about like fighting back against the old ways. Kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like the topic of like generational trauma, or like how like you are being forced into a role by the older generation that you don't believe in, or that you don't agree with the values of. But yeah, but you are like fighting for a better future is like a lot to like do with how, yeah, I see a lot of mass movements that's trying to build a better future. There's like people who are like fighting against climate change. They're like trying to fight for a better environment for the future. And yeah, I guess you are saying text and subtext. So the text are you have superpowers and you are fighting like with your powers, but the subtext is more about like fighting about like social issues.
Yeah, and I think that's, and you see that in to the reference about X-Men and what are, you're saying it's building on this legacy. Umbrella Academy is obviously building on X-Men, which is taking a tradition that you could see superhero stories as very one-to-one, like there's superheroes and there's supervillains, and they kind of cancel each other out. And then politics doesn't change. Society doesn't change. The little people were the same because these gods are just fighting in the sky. But actually, if you go all the way back, I mean, Superman was created, right, by a Jewish, illustrator to fight the Nazis, right? And that was really the birth of the modern, I mean, I'm no historian of comic books, but as I understand it, that was like a big deal. Obviously he's still around. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to this argument that in the 60s you get, the Spider-Man and X-Men of the world, the sort of misfits, the outcasts. And I think it's really nice to think of a game where you're saying, okay, we're going to assume you're an outcast. I mean, everyone when I remember, reading the X-Men, it was assumed, right? Everyone is an outcast. Now, it didn't do necessarily the best job of handling issues of race and gender, but at least it sort of started with like, everyone here is not part of mainstream society. Everyone thinks you're a quote unquote freak or mutant. And they're literally, a lot of it was in the 90s, it was like putting people in cages, right? It was about concentration camps and like, real themes that like actually matter are still happening today, to this moment in IRL world. So it was a way for, as a kid, to kind of connect some of those themes and to explore the feeling of like, wow, how would that make me feel if like me and my family were like interred in a camp by a government against our will? So I think it's important to make those things. And I definitely think it's really sad that some gamers are still stuck in a world where they're like, don't tell me, I don't know, whatever racist thing they're thinking, it's just awful. And I'm sorry that that cropped up. And it is a cool game. It's a great name. It's got great art. And it's using this token economy. It's what's called belonging outside belonging system, right?
Right.
So if people are interested, definitely check out, Molotov College. But yeah,
what a name.
It's a great name. Yeah, it definitely is fun.
I mean, I did get like a complaint a few weeks ago saying, "Oh, I shouldn't cut Molotov College because Molotov is a bad person."
I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's splitting the hair of a hair, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, obviously, Molotov. They are calling it Molotov to make fun of the Finnish. We're using Molotov to make fun of the Russian politician whose last name is Molotov. So from the start, it was used to like make fun of the person rather than to like glorify him.
Right. And your logo is the cocktail, is a Molotov cocktail, which is a great logo. So it's like instantly you get the idea. It's about anarchy. Yeah. But you're the X-Men or whatever. So it feels. I don't think anyone will be confused about, oh my God, you're such a Stalinist or whatever, right? I mean, these are the problems on the left of like forest and trees, right? Getting way too into trees and not seeing the bigger opportunity for having games that matter and having these discussions in a kind of safe way. Yeah.
And then, funny. Yeah. So I just I tried to answer the question, and if you have a school named after you, you are most likely a horrible person. So they're all like, philanthropists who got their money by exploiting labor, or worse, like through like slaves. And I think it was Yale. I think
Yale and Harvard have both.
The biggest sample. The sample.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just agreeing that is a real problem of it turns out all these founding figures in polite society in the global north tend to be like they were slave owning assholes, except for Thomas Paine. I don't know if anybody's named a school after him, but other than that,
I actually don't think I've ever heard of like a Thomas Paine University or anything.
And you got to wonder why.
You got to wonder why. Anyway, sorry, that's very American politics.
Is Thomas Paine good or bad? I don't know. So when I was
I'm personally ambivalent about Thomas Paine, but
no, he was great. He was super progressive. I'm saying all the other founding figures that have named schools that I can think of were all like slave owners, right? All the Washingtons and Jefferson.
Yeah. I was saying, but then at my university, there's actually a Thomas Paine building, so it's interesting.
Oh, that's good. Wait, what was the university, if you don't mind my asking?
University of East Anglia.
Okay, yeah. Well, there you go. The British.
But I mean,
they know what's up.
But still, most of the time it's named after someone who is like extremely rich who can like donate money,
right?
And because capitalism, like you don't get rich by doing good things. You do the good things to like wipe up the taxes.
Yeah. I've never heard it put so succinctly, but you're completely right.
Arthur, I want to talk. Maybe we should talk about Conviction, which is another bigger game that came out more recently. Are there things you want to talk about? Again, you have so many games and so many themes, and there's definitely some clear threads, themes that we've touched on. But are there things that you want to bring up, either that you're working on now or that you have just come out recently, that we should make sure?
I can talk a bit about Conviction.
Cool.
We were talking about Spider-Man, so it all started with like the last Spider-Verse film, and I was just like watching on YouTube a discussion about like gender and like secret identity. And then it kind of like got me, just kind of like started to do like lots of research about like gender and gender theory. There's one thing I can say is like, as someone who is like an ethnic minority and like someone who's neurodivergent, like my identity like doesn't really fit into the gender binary. As in like there's just the gender binary is just like a constructed norm. If you read about like lots of gender theory by like Butler, by Judith Butler, and then I started reading Judith Butler's text, and it's kind of I really love. It got me into philosophy. Like in the past, I always thought, philosophy is just like Aristotle, and
Socrates, and
so this is about like these like big ideas that doesn't have anything to do with real life. But then and then we started reading about like more about theories, and I guess that they are like politics adjacent sometimes. Like they're not are they part of philosophy? But anyway, what I meant, like there's a lot of like great thinkers in the 20th century. Their writings like philosophy adjacent stuff that has a lot to do with real life, how we live, and it's relevant to life. It's not just some abstract ideas. So I was reading Butler, I was reading Foucault, and reading a lot about like this gender and identity. And I actually I wrote most of Conviction before I started reading on Foucault. I mean, I've heard of Foucault before, but I have not like really read the text until I finished the first draft of Conviction. But then, but everything that he wrote kind of fits into the idea of we are all kind of the society, like from like school to the army to like everything in life is always about like there's this kind of like prison, this kind of like system in which they want to discipline us and enforce kind of like the model person that's like easy to manage of building this like norms. So conviction is about kind of like pushing back against the norms that the society has imposed on you, specifically it's about gender, but then also about other aspects of identity.
Yeah, and so these are all really important themes that I think we've talked about it a little before on the podcast, and Chris, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. But people are attracted to RPGs because you can begin to play with character and self, and see that yourself is a character you're performing, and kind of relate that to, like, in real life, the things you have to perform for society, or the constraints, the real material constraints on being an authentic self, and how that kind of plays out. And so I think games are this like microcosm that can be fun and freeing, and allow us to sort of think about ourselves. But can you say a little about sort of how conviction plays out as an RPG? Like, what are some ways in which, how does it work basically in the game, right? It's sort of about, being in a prison of a sort, but so I'm curious if you want to give your sort of pitch for the game.
Yeah. So that idea is like so I was talking to, I had a sensitivity consultant, and we were just talking about, at first it's a play on the word on like conviction. So conviction can mean a crime, but it can also mean like a strong belief. And conflict is, the problem is, I was talking to the sensitivity consultant, and like, even though like conflict is sometimes used like as a word used for prisoners, but then lots of groups are kind of like against the term, because like lots of the prisoners are not convicted. Yeah, so it's like unfair to call like someone a convict when, like, I guess it's like how flawed the legal system is. Even if you are not convicted of a crime, you can still be put into prison and like lose years of your life before you can kind of like fight in court and try to clear your name.
Rikers Island here in New York is a great example of being a convict without being convicted, I think. But I think, it still works because it's playing with all these different layers of being convicted or having conviction, or, But there's an overlap that's really, really interesting there.
So it's again, it's using the belonging outside belonging system as it's by Dream a Skill, Dream a Path by Avery Elder, and it's the same system that I used in Molotov College. So you are just like you are trading tokens. So the belonging outside belonging is sort of descended from like Power by the Apocalypse. So instead of having one MC, the MC's duty is being broken into like usually into 6 different playbooks, and they're spread between the players. Yeah. You can say something else while I kind of like bring up.
No, and I didn't mean to. We didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. Just in terms of helping people connect the philosophical points, which I think are so important, with how do you then, use that in game design. And this has come up before. Both Butler's work in general, but also more recently how that's her new book is about how there's such a backlash to gender theory, and how that's become this real divisive political topic, which. I saw a talk she gave that, and I think I might have said this, but it was like surprising to her, because when she started writing, it was like a minor thread in philosophy that mattered to some people a lot, but most people didn't really think about that much. And it's become, like in the US at least, I actually was hearing this on a political podcast, that it's at least as big of an issue, a problem really in the UK, is that so many right-wing people have made their whole life now around like normalizing there's two genders, you pick, which one, and like, and tying it to bioessentialism, that it's something assigned at birth, and just these convictions that they held that are so like problematic and really shape society. So I think it's interesting to make a game about it. And I was just kind of curious how you went about it, and really what the result is, sort of to pitch to folks that they check it out. But yeah, there is, they can go to your itch page and learn more. So, take it however you want.
Yeah.
You don't have to go into it in depth. If
you don't have to give us the whole rundown.
Exactly. Yeah. People can read. They should go to your itch page. That's one takeaway from this conversation.
Yeah, one of the quotes that I put in the book is from the book Undoing Gender. It says, "Fantasy is what allows us to imagine ourselves and others otherwise. It establishes the possible in excess of the real. It points elsewhere, and when it's embodied, it brings the elsewhere home." So, they were talking about drag, but then it seems like somehow fitting for TTRPGs.
Yeah, I think it's extremely fitting. I mean, even as far back as gendered trouble, Butler frames gender as performativity, right? Like that's the term that they use is gender for performativity in gender trouble. And, you know, I think exploring different identities, exploring different personhoods through performativity is kind of at the core of what I think, at least for the people on this call, is like what is at the core of TTRPGs. Less so about being murder hobos, less so about killing, but like really, yeah, like exploring personhood, exploring identity and politic through performance. So it makes sense that there's almost a one-to-one between what Butler is saying about gender and then like how we can apply that in games as well.
Yeah. And I'll just say from the philosophy standpoint, I think that quote is a really good one because, you know, they're talking about the excess of the real as a way to think about what's possible. And I think that's really gets at the heart of like why we play these games in general. And that, I mean, you know, gender is one major dimension of that. And I think there's other dimensions too to personhood that we explore through games, through story games specifically, where you make up a person and okay, now I'm a pelican. What if it's not just like, what if I was a pelican? It's what if I was an organizer or a better leftist, or what if I was greedy? What if I leaned into more of my asshole nature? I mean, any of these things. And I think, gender seems like such an obvious one that cuts across so many dimensions of life. And I love that in the game, I mean, you have, I think, you say your convictions manifest in a special ability called gender, which I think is such a lovely way, to quote you, that kind of takes something that we might otherwise write on our character sheet or not nowadays, and turns it into like a core mechanic. And I think that gets sort of Butler building on, Deleuze and Guattari or whatever, but that like the virtual is not against the real. It's we have the real world, and then we can imagine this virtual plane of things that could happen. And I think we have to sort of, I think that's where hope lives also, to go back to the bigger, picture conversation about politics and these ups and downs. So I think it's a really cool idea to start game design from that like philosophical insight, work with someone else and talk through what does it mean to be convicted? What does it mean to have convictions, to have a gender? And what if I mechanicalized that, and made a play loop? So it's a different way, and it's a cool way to sort of approach game design.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I was also reading about, why we should abolish prisons, but it's not a strong theme in the game, but it's kind of like one of the reasons why I want to kind of like destigmatize. I mean, there's the difference between like crime and harm. Just because you have committed crime because you broke the law, but doesn't mean you have like caused harm to people. There's two different things.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of like it wasn't the forefront of the game, but it's kind of like what I wanted to do as well. Yeah, just to like explore what it means to be. If you're doing something that doesn't fit into the norm, it's much easier for it to be labeled as a crime and get punished for it. And about like if you're marginalized, you're more likely to be targeted by the police.
Much more likely. Okay, I have a pitch, which is that we should all work on a game together called Panopticon, which is about being gay and doing crime in a surveillance state.
This sounds great. Yeah. And there's some
that's the pitch. Yeah. We'll figure out the specifics later.
Well, I guess so. We're, I do love that pitch that we should work on a game together. I also think we should talk about, Arthur, what you have going on right now and what you'd like people to do besides obviously follow you on Itch. You have a Patreon, and I know you have a game for spooky season called Mud Ghost Estate, which I was just looking at, that looks cool. So people, if they're listening in the next couple of weeks, might want to, investigate that. And anything else you want to sort of leave us with, but, definitely curious to hear sort of what's next. What are you working on?
Yeah, I mean, I just finished Mud Ghost Estate, which is a game, a spooky game inspired by the folklore of Hong Kong. And it's made for Folklore Jam 2024, which is a game jam that I ran in 2019, 2020, and I'm running now again in 2024. So it was originally going to be from October 1st to October 31st, but I've now extended the deadline for another 2 weeks. So the idea is like people make a game based on folklore from their own culture or a place they belong. So yeah, it's part of the problem in which I'm feeling like lots of the time, people would write games about like mythology, and then they would like take kind of like this like gods and myths from like other cultures, and then they kind of like projected a lot of like stereotypes into the myths and folklore. So the idea is like, oh, we are telling our own story. We are telling stories about like folklore from our own culture, and not just pick something from other culture and have it influenced by our own stereotypes or how it should be.
Yeah, there's a real trend in TTRPG specifically of Japanese themed games by non-Japanese people, where it's just like everyone is a ninja or samurai, and it's very common genre. And it's just interesting to sort of see over time maybe more designers bring their own cultural understandings to games in more frankly interesting ways.
I'm not going to go into details, but like I've also been like reading like Ever Said's Orientalism. I don't know if you have heard of it.
Great book. Love Said.
Yeah, I mean, like to be fair, like it's kind of like how I learned about the book is from like the TTRPG sphere, I think. And then then I read it, and then I agree with it. I mean, it's mostly about the Middle East and also a bit about India, like when I would say talk about like the Orientalism. But then I can still, I find it also applies to like the Far East, East Asia as well, because he was talking about how like a French explorer, I think a French explorer in India is kind of like how disappointed they were, and when what they read from the book is so different to like what they saw
the reality of the situation. Yeah, but it's certainly broadly applicable for anything that's not the West, quote unquote, big capital W, the West. And
it's a bit of like what we're talking about is essentialism. So it's about essentialism about gender, but it's also about race, especially like in the context of D&D, about how if you are, if you're of certain like race, then you are going to be evil, or at least that's what it used to be, and they try to change it, but and it's obviously, at least I like the intent behind changing it, and then there's lots of like bigots like saying, oh no, we want like evil dark elves, and we don't accept that there can be good.
I mean, it's nice that they've put a new finish on it, but it's still spray painting a turd, in my opinion.
This shows. I think we'll generally not have to defend Wizards too much. I will say to think about like some of the corrections and some of the trends in indie RPGs I've seen, and thinking about from a Said informed standpoint. Like I think Mud Ghost Estate is interesting. It makes me think of so Sarah Shipp wrote this really good book that we're big fans of, Thematic Integration in Board Game Design, which broadly is a great short manual about game design. And one thing she talks about is wide and narrow scopes and high and low resolution. And just like games generally tend to be easier for people to understand and also more interesting if they're narrow in scope but high resolution, meaning there's a high integration of thematic components, rules wise to the narrative of the game. And I think Mud Ghost Estate is an interesting example. And why I bring this up is it fights against a kind of Orientalism where everyone in all of Asia is somehow the same, which is utterly ridiculous.
It's an insane thing to say.
So here we have, it's not just a game set like in Hong Kong, like it's set in a specific building in Hong Kong at a specific time, referencing another time during a certain time of the year about a certain festival. But you get all of that in like a short paragraph, right? It's not like anyone has to do research. You're just sort of thrown into a situation anyone can vibe with, which is your teenagers exploring a haunted place, right? It's a ghost story. It's Scooby-Doo. It's every slasher movie, but it's in a specific time and place that you, the creator, know about and can, in a way, it's not like the goal is not to teach us something, but it's just to use that reservoir of actual cultural knowledge that's interesting to tell a good story, as opposed to D&D saying, well, we're going to do a book that's sort of about, whatever cultural thing they want to do a book about, but it becomes sort of smoothed out, and it runs into Orientalism, right? It becomes kind of a
I mean, like when you write, when you have like TTRPGs or like these giant media franchises trying to like write a book about like certain race and culture, it's always about writing what distinguishes them from another people. So it's like reducing like a big culture to like the differences from them to the main one. Yeah, so I don't know, like, I mean, I did like some of the freelance work that I did. I kind of like write about kind of like certain groups from certain cultures, and it's difficult. Like I kind of like don't take a lot of those jobs anymore. But at the same time, if you have to categorize something, then it almost always going to be kind of emphasized on the differences. So I don't know what's like. I mean, the best way to do it is to not try to categorize everything. But then that's how a lot of like TTRPGs, like source books, are. They are trying to categorize everything, and that's what makes people want to read them.
Yeah, it's marketing. You bring up a marketing issue there, right? Like, how do you?
Humans we want to be when we want to learn about something. Like that's usually how we first approach it. It's by learning what is similar and what is different. I mean, I guess like there's certain human nature, but then there's also like lots of harmful stereotypes get like.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, unfortunately, the categorization thing is just a part of the way that our minds work on a neurological level. That's just the human brain. But yeah, I do think, going back to what we were saying earlier about like enforcing hierarchies and things like that, being careful in your categorization not to reinforce problematic hierarchies is, I think, kind of the task for TTRPG designers, because like we have to categorize things. Things have to go into a bullet list. We have to have certain types of items and characters and stats and things like that. So it's inescapable, but I think, how you handle it is the big question.
I also wonder about like categorizing things more by mechanic, or by letting authors categorize their own work. For one, you can categorize your work however you want, but we on this show could categorize games by like how many players are involved, or what are the mechanics involved, or either cards or dice, but in terms of some of that cultural work, it's like, that's one reason to do the show, or frankly, is to ask people, their ideas about
how do you do this?
Everything. Politics, gender, whatever, all these things we've been discussing. So it's really great, Arthur, to chat with you about it. But I agree. I think some of it is just doing particular work, making games about a more narrow scope, which doesn't necessarily mean one shot. I know, and I agree with y'all that most people are moving maybe more in that direction, but I still like to think of games that could be at least short campaigns, but it doesn't mean that they need to have as wide a scope as D&D's kind of multiple worlds, which can be fun for sure and is fun for lots of people. But I think it does present a challenge at the level of like more work, but also at the level of it kind of becomes a lot of it becomes vague in terms of like where are we, when are we, like you can't lean on those real cultural touchstones. And I think having that, it's not the end. It's like a narrow door through which you enter a bigger story can be really profound. So I definitely think that's something that people who are putting out a lot of one-off games, are able to sort of exploit is each time they do it, really focus on this one lens into something that could be very big. I mean, again, like thinking of Conviction, it's pretty big themes, about sort of being imprisoned and what is gender. Maybe Mud Ghost Estate is meant to be much more of a traditional one-shot, right? It's one location. But either way, you're giving people something rich to play with.
With Molotov College, even though there's no progression, or like I'm planning to maybe like do a bigger book, and then maybe I'll write a bit about like progression, about how you can change the moves. But as a whole, it doesn't really need a progression system. You can keep playing it and playing it. Because like in the story, like there's no end to the story. Because again, inspired by the Umbrella Academy, so as soon as you solve one apocalypse, another one will show up. And I feel like it's also like a commentary on like real life, in which like there's always some like bad people trying to do bad things and ruin the like some bad politicians is always going to ruin the like in our case, like in the case in the UK, like how the NHS, the public health is being like kind of like this like underfunded. Sorry, I mean I'm getting too much into like politics, but then like seeing in the environment how like we had lots of environmental problems that need solving, and it's impossible. Yeah, I mean, hopefully there will be we can build a better world. We can like solve the problems with good people work together and solve the big problems. But in reality, we are stopped by the people in power who always like on the side of corporate profit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I mean, I think we could do a whole. I mean, if you want to talk politics, we can go there anytime, and that's part of the point of the show. But yeah, I think that one element you brought up a few times is hope, and I think that's a good place to leave it on is having games where there's some possibility of change, right? Where players can have agency, people can have agency, but acknowledging that that's really difficult, and that as you say, there's always a new problem, and even if we imagined that whatever version of the communist future, more anarchist or more Marxist, that's something that I mean, there's problems with Zizek, but Zizek has done a good job saying, well, what would that actually, what would some problems arise then? There'd still be conflicts, there'd still be issues. So I think you can kind of make games on the spectrum from everything is dystopian and awful to like, actually everything's utopian, but there's still conflicts, and there's, humans are still humans. So I think that's a generative place to sort of remind us. All right, Chris, do you have any last questions? And then we should leave Arthur with a final word and tell us,
Yeah, well, my last question, as is tradition, leads into the final word for you, Arthur. Where can people find your work? I know we've said itch a billion times on this episode, but specifically, where on itch can we find your work? How can we support you? What do you got coming out? How can we find it? What can we do for you as a community, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, on my, I don't know if I can just put the link somewhere. So it's AOL -ether .itch.io. It's kind of a chemistry pun
Nice.
on my name. I mean, I have Twitter, but like lots of people are moving from Twitter onto Blue Sky, and I have a Blue Sky as well. I've got Instagram. I was trying to make a YouTube channel. I make some videos about TTRPGs. I want to make more, but then I'm not motivated enough and don't have enough time.
Video's hard.
And I have a Patreon with people like paid subscribers with I would put their name on the new games I make. That's kind of like a thank you note in the credit. Yeah, and I think that's most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you again for being on the show. So everyone,
thank you for the opportunity.
No, yeah, anytime we can chat again, and yeah, let's come up with a game. Let's jam. So everyone, check out May You Fish in Interesting Times and all of the games that Arthur's putting out, of which there's many. Molotov College looks really great, and I know you always have something new in the works. So follow them on the X or whatever is left of social media, and Patreon. And this has been Why We Roll, a tabletop game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio with Chris Pickett and Wythe Marshall. And you can support us over at patreon.com/Stillfleet and find out about our games generally at stillfleet.com. All right, Arthur, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. We really enjoy learning from you, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening to Why We Roll.
Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on all social media at Stillfleet. You can find out more about Danse Macabre, Stillfleet, and all of our games over at stillfleet.com.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the god that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my god.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.